it's very interesting because you have this story about these gang members from El Salvador, from Venezuela, who were deported illegally. Now, this is what is being said from the perspective of the left. The left believes that this was an illegal deportation of hundreds of gang members from El Salvador and Venezuela who were deported to El Salvador, specifically to be placed in probably the worst prison in the world. Probably. Now, if you don't know anything about El Salvador at one point in time, they were one of the most dangerous, if not the most dangerous place to live, according to the population that they had. So if you look at the population, you look at the crime, you look at the gang member and the gang activities in El Salvador, it was one of the most dangerous places to live. Since then, they've had a regime change, and the president has got a lot of praise because now he's made it one of the safest places to live based on the same metric of population, right? And one of the ways that he did that was, number one, focusing on building and growing the economy. That was number one. And then number two, or maybe this is like 1B, was he quite literally rounded up all the gang members and just threw them into prison. And they created a new prison specifically to hold these gang members. And the thing about El Salvador, the thing that made El Salvador so just violent from the standpoint of gang activity is, you know how there's like initiation processes to get into the gang, right? You know how like back in the day, because most of us live in America. You know how that they would be like, yo, you got to get jumped into the gang. You got to get jumped in, right? There's like an initiation process in order to get into the gang. In El Salvador, a part of the initiation process was that if you wanted to join one of these gangs, and this is from the mouth of the president, he said that they would go on these trips and they would all go out, and you would essentially have to kill the first person that you saw. And oftentimes, if you saw a family member, your grandma, a cousin, then they were not off limits. They were not off limits. So you had these gang members who were taking out their own family members in order to be a part of the gang. And this is what was happening. Same with women and children. Nobody was off limits. And this was all a part of the initiation process. That's the level of wickedness that was taking place. And also, we know for a fact, based on what the president of El Salvador was saying, I don't know if you ever watched that interview. The president of El Salvador, he sat down with Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson went out to El Salvador. I reacted to it on this channel. The video, I did a reaction to it. He sat down with the president, and the president of El Salvador, he said that the gang activity and the violence that they were seeing was deeply spiritual. He said these organizations are literally demonic. They literally worship the devil, like literally. It's not like, oh, I think it's no. They literally do. That's what he said. So just a little bit of context, right? Those individuals, some of those individuals from those affiliated gangs from El Salvador, some way, shape, or form, made their way into the United States. Also, there were Venezuelan gang members who had made their way into the United States. I don't know what happened. I don't know if it sounds like, and this might, I don't think this was formally announced, but it sounds like the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, it sounds like he made some sort of deal with the president of El Salvador in order to deport these individuals to El Salvador, because they were taking Venezuelans and they were deporting them to El Salvador. So I don't know if there's some sort of deal in place, but during this whole process, there was a judge, a federal judge that came in while they were deporting these individuals. There was a federal judge that came in and said, this is unlawful. This is unconstitutional. You must reverse this right now. And so you have a lot of people who are saying that Trump is a criminal because he refused to reverse the deportations, which is very interesting because if you remember, on the last day of his presidency, what is the very last thing that Joe Biden did? Can anybody answer that in the chat? I'm sure there's some people who can answer that. The very last thing he did was pardon his entire family. Now, a lot of people said that he pardoned his entire family because he was afraid of the potential political persecution that Trump was going to inflict on his family. That's what a lot of people say. But if you didn't do nothing wrong, why are you sitting here offering a pardon for your entire family? It's kind of sketchy. It's kind of sketchy. Anyway, let's play this video along with several other videos, and then we'll continue our conversation.
Hours after President Trump invoked an 18th century wartime law, alleged members of Venezuela's prison gang Tren de Aragua arriving in El Salvador. The Salvadorian president sharing this dramatic video on X depicting TDA and MS-13 gang members hauled off into a plane, thrown into a bus, and then their heads shaved as they're now being held in an infamous terrorism confinement center. A senior Trump administration official telling News Nation in total, 261 illegal aliens were deported to El Salvador, of which 137 were deported using that Alien Enemies Act. The timing comes as a federal judge actually blocked deportation flights after Trump invoked that law from 1798. But the Trump administration is firing back now, saying it did not violate that ruling because the planes were already in international airspace. News Nation's Jorge Ventura live in San Diego with what we're learning about those deportations at this hour. Jorge.
Well, Alex, a senior Trump administration official confirming to News Nation that the rap sheets of those illegal aliens deported to El Salvador yesterday do include kidnapping, sexual abuse of a child, robbery, and aggravated assault on.
Okay, let's stop there. The rap sheets of these individuals who were deported: kidnapping, sexual abuse of a minor, assault. These are the individuals that, I'm not trying to sound insensitive, because like they're human beings, but at the same time, these are the individuals that we're sitting here stressing about, why did we deport them? The question we should be asking, how do known gang affiliated people, how are they able to enter the country in the first place? That's the question that we should be asking. How are they able to enter the country in the first place? You didn't have anybody checking to see like, hey, is so-and-so in a gang? You know what I'm saying? Like, let's just keep it real. Does this person have a criminal record? Does this person have that should be question like number one. When we get to like the screening and the background stuff, we should be like, hey, does this person have a criminal record? Yes or no? Yes. What did they do? Oh, they in a gang? They killed who? Okay, yeah, nah. But for how many years? For 4 years, we had no vetting process. We didn't care. And then you have these same individuals who come into the country and continue to commit crimes against children. And these are the individuals that you're so up in arms about, saying that Trump went against the law in order to deport these people. But y'all don't have that same energy for children in the womb. You know what I'm saying? Y'all don't care. It just blows my mind. The whole system, it just blows my mind. I don't get it. I don't understand it. I don't get it. I don't understand it. Let's continue.
police officers. Now, according to El Salvador's president, Nayib Bukele, the country will be receiving 238 suspected Trinidad gang members and 23 suspected MS-13 gang members who were immediately transferred to the country's mega prison. Footage from El Salvador's government shows a high-security transfer with shackled prisoners stumbling forward as heavily armed officers push them.
This is what the El Salvadorian president posted on X. This is what he posted. He was excited about getting these people back. Here's the crazy part. The El Salvadorian president, he's excited about getting these people back. But then you have an entire portion of Americans who are upset that they were deported. You know what I'm saying? Like, what is really going on here?
Along the wrists, ankles, and waist are tightly bound, forcing them to shovel in short, restricted steps. On the tarmac, riot police stand shoulder to shoulder, gripping their batons as helicopters hover overhead, scanning for any disturbances. The men are loaded one by one onto special units and military buses, their heads forced down as officers keep them under strict control. Sirens blare as a convoy of armored vehicles, escorted by special forces, transport them straight to the notorious CSOT mega prison, the same facility where El Salvador's government has locked up tens of thousands of gang members in recent years. Inside the prison walls, the men have their heads shaved in assembly line fashion while guards stand over them barking orders. Cameras capture the moment they're wearing white prison uniforms.
That's pretty crazy, though. That is pretty crazy. That is pretty crazy. They be shaving their heads. They trying to dehumanize these people. You know what I'm saying? That is pretty wild. But, you know, here's the thing. Assuming that everybody is who the U.S. government is saying that they are, assuming that they are these gang members who committed heinous crimes in their own countries and then came over here to continue committing heinous crimes, assuming that's correct, bro, this is what you've brought into your life by way of submitting to your own flesh, by way of serving the God of this world. You know, this is what you've brought into your life. This is the result. This is what happens. This is the evidence. This is the fruit that you get for participating in these things, for associating with these gangs, for doing this crime. For this is what happens. And it's unfortunate. It sucks. But at the same time, it's like, yo, you did this. You brought this upon yourself. You know what I mean? And we can go into the deeper problem of sin and stuff like that, but let's just wait a second. Let's continue.
Before being marched, hands behind their backs, into tightly packed holding cells. Back in Washington, D.C., a federal judge ruled that deporting migrants without due process violated long-standing U.S. asylum protections. The White House pushing back, saying they didn't violate a court order. Quote, the order came too late and illegals were already in international airspace. The El Salvadoran president posting, oopsie.
This is what this boy said. President of El Salvador talking about oopsie, too late. He talking about some oopsie is too late. It's so, it's just weird. It's weird. Like, if we have known criminals in the United States, how come we can't deport them if they're known criminals? On top of that, they're continuing to commit crimes. On top of that, the place where they're being sent back to is in support of those deportations, but it's our own government fighting against it. It's just the whole political system itself is just so divisive. it's like we can't agree on just stuff that really makes sense. And this is the problem. And this is, if you look at the numbers, if you look at the data, especially if you go on like CNN, for example, they've been talking about this over the past week or so. They've been talking about how the Democratic Party, they have their lowest approval ratings. They're down like 27% in approval ratings. So like even like a lot of Democrats who would call themselves Democrats, they don't approve of the mindset and the thought process and the actions that are being taken by their own party. And it's like, I'm not going to sit here and say I agree with everything that Trump does. I don't, but I can very much identify when it's like, yo, that makes sense. We should probably do that because, you know, people are going to be safer. They committed crimes. Let's pack them up. Let's get them out of there. Let's send them back to El Salvador. It don't really take that much. But you have all these people who want to stress about, oh, well, the judge said no. The judge said no. So what are we supposed to do? Like, what do you want us to do? This stuff is crazy.
Too late. His government confirming the inmates will remain in El Salvador with no plans to return them to the U.S. U.S. officials are backing the move. Secretary Marco Rubio called it a fair price for American taxpayers. And for those 137 illegal aliens deported under the Aliens Enemy Act, that does allow the U.S. government to deport those individuals without trial, Alex.
So Trump, he invoked a 1998 wartime law. So this law is only supposed to be used or only supposed to be invoked during war, right? And people are talking about like, oh, well, you know, we're not even in war and blah, blah, blah. But then Trump said, no, we are in war because we're being invaded, which prompted him to, you know, invoke this law.
All right, we're also following up on the USS Gravely. That's that guided missile destroyer.
Something else I thought was interesting. I just like hearing different people's perspectives, right? I like hearing different perspectives. Let me play this video.
You're watching The Legal Breakdown. Glenn, you and I have spoken extensively about the prospect of an impending constitutional crisis in the sense that a court order is handed down and Trump opts to ignore it. We are there right now. Can you explain what just happened today?
Yeah, we are there, Brian. We may not be exactly in constitutional crisis territory, but we do have the Trump administration outright defying an order that was issued by the chief judge for the U.S. District Court in Washington, D.C., Judge Boasberg. And here's what happened. There was a suit filed because apparently it was known that the U.S. government, Donald Trump, through Marco Rubio's actions, was going to try to deport hundreds of Venezuelans to El Salvador. Apparently, there is an agreement that's been reached, according to the reporting, between Marco Rubio, the executive branch of the U.S. government, and the government of El Salvador to take, you know, whoever we choose to collect up and try to deport to El Salvador. And what the reporting has revealed is,
which is a very interesting statement that he said, like, you know, whoever we decide to collect up and send to El Salvador, the prison over there in El Salvador, as I said, probably one of the worst prisons in the world. It's definitely like top 3. And the reason for that is because it's specifically designed to hold violent gang members. Specifically. So to say that they're just rounding up whoever and sending them, it's kind of that's very shady verbiage, because you're making it seem like you know they're just grabbing whoever and just sending them to El Salvador unlawfully. It just sounds crazy. And once again, I'm so confused. And this is why I like watching different perspectives, right? I'm so confused as to how come there's not more of a focus on the individuals and the crimes that those individuals were committing before they came to the United States and while they were in the United States. How come there's not more of a focus on that? That's just my question.
That there were more than 200 Venezuelans who our federal government, our executive branch, just summarily says, well, they're gang members, therefore we're going to grab them up and we're going to send them to El Salvador. Let me just pause here for a minute. I wouldn't even call that a deportation. There are actually laws and rules and procedures that go along with actually deporting people who are here illegally, who have been deemed by a court to be here illegally. This really, to me, feels more like a kidnapping and an ejection from the United States of America, but it's being called a deportation. So what happened was, federal agents went and collected up more than 200 Venezuelans that they claimed were dangerous gang members, and they put them on a plane and they sent them to El Salvador, where they were received and, according to the reporting, put into terrorism confinement centers where they can just arbitrarily be held for a year. But of course, the reporting is they can re-up that for additional years if the El Salvadoran authorities decide to do that. So while this was ongoing, the judge from D.C. federal court, the chief judge, ordered the Trump administration essentially not to do it. Now, it looks like the planes may have already been in the air at that point. The devil's in the details. We need more reporting on that. But the judge said if the planes are in the air, then turn them around and send them back because you don't have a lawful basis to do it. In essence, he issued a temporary restraining order, a TRO, telling them you can't do it because there will be irreparable harm that I can't undo with, the court system or with court orders. And as best we can tell, the Trump administration either ignored or intentionally defied the order to turn the planes around and bring those Venezuelans back to the U.S. so there could be some sort of a lawful process applied before they were deported. So the question now is teed up. Does that constitute a constitutional crisis? Because it feels like there's been an intentional disobedience to a lawful court order. That takes some.
So here's what gets me. Just going through some of the comments, right? If Trump doesn't have to follow court orders, then can we negate the Supreme Court's presidential immunity ruling too? Project 2025 is beginning to smell like Germany, 1933. What would you be willing to do to stop Hitler before he started? Because this is that sort of moment. This is the problem, is that, there's a lot of fear being instilled on the left. There's a lot of fear. And I don't think it's warranted. I think it's extremely unwarranted, the amount of fear that is being brewed up on the left. Because you have people who literally think that this is going to be the start of some like Hitler Holocaust moment. And I'm just so confused. Once again, you have an administration who clearly said that they were going to focus and pour resources into immigration. And they said that they were going to focus on the most violent individuals first. And when they do just that, when they spend X amount of money on resources, you have all these special agents who are doing investigations into these individuals. They're not just blindly picking them up. They're doing investigations into these specific individuals. They're gathering intel. They're locating them. And they're performing extremely calculated stings in order to arrest these people and then deport them back to the country that they came from. And they're doing this in an effort to make the community as a whole safer. Because for 4 years, we lived under an administration who literally let any and everybody into the country, regardless of their criminal background. Regardless of their criminal background. So I don't know what, like, people think that, oh, Trump is randomly just going to start rounding up whoever he doesn't like and just sending them to super duper max gang prisons in El Salvador. Like, come on now. Like, let's use a little more of our brain cells. Somebody else says he needs to be put in jail. He needs to be put in jail. Anyone who defies a court order should be held in contempt and jailed. I don't care who the F they are. This was the most interesting comment, in my opinion. Somebody really said this. Blossom Forever 79. Don't go pick on Blossom, but I just think this is crazy that this was actually said. He's getting rid of voters, ... That's what he's doing. Anyone who would vote for Democrat. I don't think Trump is planning on leaving office. He's getting rid of voters. He's getting rid of voters. I'm looking at the chat now. He doesn't want to leave. I know he don't want to leave office. I said, well, he said he was trying to figure out how to get another term. I mean, let's just talk. Can we be real? Can we be real? Can we be real for a second? Some of y'all might not want to hear this. You might not want to hear this, but I'm just going to say it because it's true. I'm going to say it. Obama got 3 terms. Think about that. Obama got 3 terms. Come on now. You think Biden, what was Biden really doing? What was Biden really doing? What was Kamala really doing? Right? Everybody wants to say, it seems like he wasn't really, pulling the shots. It seems like he wasn't really, he wasn't really doing nothing. Because that was really low-key Obama's 3rd term. Like, I'm not saying that Trump should get another term, but from a Democratic, you look at the Democrats, bro, there's some sketchy stuff going on. That's why they're so upset. That's why, and this is the thing that gets me. Here's the hypocrisy. The Democrats are so upset at Elon Musk. The same individuals who told us to get rid of our gas cars, to get electric cars because it's better for the environment, those same individuals are burning electric cars because they're mad at Elon Musk. For what? For attempting to identify wasteful spending practices within the government that would in turn reduce the waste of our tax dollars. Why are you so mad at Elon? Is it simply because he's associated with Trump? Or is it because he's identifying the fraudulent behavior that was taking place that so many of the individuals on that side of the party line were benefiting from? And now they're starting to see their pockets decrease. It's just, I don't know. But there's so much misinformation. There's so many people think there's just so much misinformation. You got people think that, Elon's, they're going to end like all these programs. They're going to end, Medicaid. They're going to end all these programs that help people, that people rely on and whatnot. It's like, listen, they're going through an audit. They're trying to figure out what's really being spent. We're in a deficit to the tune of trillions of dollars in debt. We're in a deficit. You know what I'm saying? Like, he's trying to figure out what's going on. But yet you have so many people who are upset, literally burning their Tesla. You're causing more harm to the environment by burning your Tesla. But yet these are the same people who told us to sell our cars to get a Tesla because it's better for the environment. I don't know. I say all that to say that this is just a divisive landscape in general. It's a divisive landscape in general. It is. I'm not saying I agree with everything that Trump does, but I don't disagree with everything that he does at the same time. I don't. But it seems like from a Democratic standpoint, and the polling data speaks for itself, the approval ratings of Democrats is at an all-time low. It speaks for itself. It seems like they've just completely lost all common sense, and they've just completely reverted to like this tribal mindset. And it's just tunnel vision. And at what point does it become idolatry? And you can think about it from either side. At what point does it become idolatry? Like, what are we truly being led by? The intentions of our party, or are we being led by God?